Here at Imola, it's the 11th of the season. We've got Lee on pole position with DTI Dave alongside. It's a great start as you'd expect from BMW, and he launches straight to the lead, passes Lee's teammate, a lot of Brave now putting Lee under pressure. The second place, it's Stig going around the outside. Stig trying for second position as they head into the first bunch of corners. Oh, the Imola cars getting together a little bit there, but out front it is DTI Dave ahead of Stig, ahead of Lee. And Lee looking like he's going to give his teammate the position for third as they head into the left-right chicane for the first time. Yeah, he's done that. And in the background we've got Cordless being pursued by Apex, VX Dave who's being pursued by Apex, and then we've got Sammy Apex now going around the outside of VX Dave. I think that VX Dave's made a mistake on track limits there because Apex is up to 6th around the outside there. And yeah, VX Dave going very slowly indeed in the background, so I think it's going to slow down. So Apex climbs up to 6th place. I started 6th on the grid, or 5th on the grid, and this is good stuff so far. The BMW's out in the lead in positions 1 and 2 as they did in the first race of the day, and Danny in 3rd place, Brave in 3rd place. So those three who battled for the top 3 positions initially in race 1 doing the same again here in race 2. And we've got Lee under pressure from Cordless, who's under pressure from Apex. Of course, Cordless was the one who made contact with Apex in the first race of the day, so Cordless might not be too happy to see Apex behind him because he might just return the favour. I'm sure they'll try and keep it as clean as possible. Look how tight now on the brakes, both of them running quite deep into the corner actually. And Lee getting away a little bit, and VX Dave now closing up on the back of his teammate. Now Lee is in straight to the pits, and so is Apex, who we understand was on quite low fuel for the start of this race, and one of the other cars in the background there was that Dell Sport. Yep. So back to the front of the grid where we've got DTI Dave ahead of, we missed that, so somehow Danny got ahead of Stig for 2nd place. And so it's DTI Dave who leads the race ahead of Brave. So actually Stig must have made a mistake, I think, track limits or something, and he's now dropped down to 3rd position. But it is DTI Dave out in front in the BMW. He had a good race 1, a good battle with VX Dave over 3rd place, eventually settling for 4th. But he's out in the lead in this one, and he's got Danny bearing down on him. Danny's been run quick all day. Of course, that stunning pole lap that we saw, one of the best of the season, and the only non-VX Dave one so far. And speaking of VX Dave in the background, he's now managed to get past Cordless as they head up the hill just. But it is so tight between these two. Look as they head into the left-hander. VX Dave's car looks very, very tail happy, as we said. Now front, Danny really putting the pressure down for 1st position once more. But there is battles throughout the field because Mark and Simon are really close together. So Mark having another pretty good run in this race with Simon trying to put him under some pressure. Simon experiencing the manual gearbox and doing a good job really. This is quite a long circuit and difficult to drive. We saw Cordless put VX Dave under pressure. These two, 1st and 2nd in the championship last year. So Cordless would love to get one over on VX Dave in this race. So let's see how that goes between those. And out front it's still so close to the race lead with Danny just 3/10 behind Dave for the race lead, and we'll go on board with Danny briefly as we head up towards turn 1, and we'll see who's got the pace in a straight line here. DTI Dave's car not looking particularly quick in a straight line. Danny goes to the outside. Where are they going to be? They must be side by side at the moment. Is Danny going to be able to go all the way around the outside? He tries it. DTI Dave ducks in behind. Danny takes the lead for the first time, almost contact as they go on the brakes, but DTI Dave managing that absolutely beautifully. That was great to see. VX Dave in 4th, Cordless in 5th, Simon up to 6th place, and that must be courtesy of some other pit stops. Looking further back, we've got Mark in the pit, we've got Sammy in the pit, Apex now in 9th place, trying to make back some of those positions, so he's probably going to make a couple up here with people in the pit lane, and he is ahead of Lee. Lee, the pole man, pole sitter, not having perhaps such a good run in this one. Obviously him and Apex both pitting very early though, so they've got many places to make up. And then we've got Dell Sport rounding out the 11 cars at the moment. Danny now starting to pull away, but only by half a second or so at the moment. Stig in 3rd position, VX Dave in 4th, not able to do anything at the moment, and then a similar gap back to Cordless in 5th position. Great to watch the BMW sliding through there. It really is a good watch, and that's Cordless. There's Extreme Beef, and then there is a long gap back to Apex, but that of course is courtesy of the pit stop, so Apex may look quite far behind. Obviously he's done his pit stop, same with Mark, same with Lee. Now Mark's come out ahead of Lee, interestingly, so that'll be interesting to see how that pans out between those guys, and it's the two extra cars battling over the final positions and the final point at the moment, as Sammy lets pass Dell, so good teamwork there from those guys. Out front though, it's actually still quite close, and DTI Dave has managed to keep with Danny at the moment, but you can see Danny's car far quicker in a straight line, or Dave's car far slower in a straight line, because even in the slipstream there, Danny's pulling away at the end of the straight there, but DTI Dave has got no issues. A little bit of lag there from Danny's car, but DTI Dave has got no issues with the handling sections of this track. Really quick, which is great. So it's fun watching this ebb and flow, and in the background it's another Renault and another BMW fighting over that final podium position at the moment. So Stig in 3rd after that fantastic win in race 1, and he'd love to back this up with another good result here, potentially another podium, potentially another win, although these guys now dropping off a little bit from the race leaders at this stage in the race. In fact, there's reasonable gaps between the top 5 there, but the top 5 definitely have something over the rest at the moment. Simon's doing a good job there. I didn't catch Simon's starting position, but I think he started fairly far down, and he's running in a solid 6th place. Loads of dirt on the front of that double green Renault, again without his teammate this week as well, so that's frustrating for that team. Apex is up to 7th, and look at him launching it over the curbs. Great stuff, and starting to make his way back up the field after that early pit stop. And a similar situation with Mark and Lee, who will probably get reasonable positions out of this finish as they've already pitted. Out front, Danny is pulling away from Dave now though, so a lot of Brave pulling away from DTI, and Danny really pushing it hard on the brakes into there. In fact, that's a bit of a mistake, because DTI Dave is all over the back of him, like a cheap suit, as David Addison would say, and they're heading up now. But again, you can see how much quicker Danny's car is in a straight line, or how much slower Dave's is. It's a bit of both really. I think Danny's car set up very fast, Dave's car very much so set up for the handling sections, and VX Dave not quite able to put Stig under any pressure at the moment, as we are not even a quarter of the way through the race. We're on lap 4 now, 16, so nothing going on there. Cordless having quite a lonely race as well. Simon having an extremely beefy but extremely lonely race, and there we've got Apex in 7th place, also having a lonely race, as is Mark and Lee and Dell and Sammy. So the gap's really quite considerable at the moment, except for this race for the lead, which continues to be close and continues to be exciting to watch. In the background, is that VX Dave? No, actually VX Dave's not very close to Stig. That was just a matter of perspective. So it really is these guys that are worth keeping an eye on as we go on board the BMW once more, building up the revs, building up the speed as we head to the double right-hander. Really tricky through here. Renault's clobbering the curbs, the BMW's having to be a little bit more careful. DTI Dave's got his BMW set up sweetly, and you can see it rides the curbs fairly well actually, and he's certainly driving it with a degree of caution, which is giving him some good speed and keeping him with that Renault as we go through the chicane. Look how quick Dave was over the curbs through there, saying that the BMW's have to keep off the curbs. Dave is not there, and he was so far. Again, losing out on the straight line, but it's the long straight where he loses out the biggest amount. So it's, you see as we go through the final 2 bends here, even if they can get the better exit, which Danny's doing a pretty good job himself, and Danny actually probably gets a slightly better exit there, but as we go up we're doing 160, 170. We'll go on board with Danny, and we'll look, so as we go under the banner, under this banner we're going to be up to about 225. It's pretty similar, but of course DTI Dave following in the slipstream, so you can gain at least 5 kilometres an hour around here, probably more at the end of that long straight. But great to watch anyway, and this is really all down to how these guys set the cars up. you find that DTI Dave's teammate Pro Stig will set up the car with a bit more straight line, and there's not really anything to choose between. In fact, DTI Dave, with the slower straight line car, the better handling car, is pulling away at the moment from his teammate and race winner from race 1, who is Stig. VX Dave's dropped a long way off Stig now, so I don't know if it was a mistake or whether Stig is absolutely nailing it at the moment. It's a mistake actually. You can see the lap time there, 2 seconds slower than Stig last lap around. Cordless going quicker than VX Dave, so Cordless might fancy his chances catching back up with the championship rival from last year. And Simon and Guy both still having very, very quiet races. Let's just watch Guy's car as we go through here, because it's great to watch these cars, especially over this second curb if he hits it. And not too aggressive actually there that time, but it's great to watch these cars as they bounce over the curbs. Mark still in 8th place, still ahead of Lee. Lee dropping a couple of seconds behind, but still within catching distance, and there's still a long way to go in this race as we're only about a third of the way through. So out in front there is Danny, still ahead of DTI Dave. DTI Dave still trying to pile on the pressure and still only half a second behind. Stig in the background going sideways coming out of the last corner, and these top 3 pulling away, these top 2 massively pulling away, but you can see Stig in the background as well, and you can't see VX Dave, the next car. So this is really top-notch driving from this lot at the moment. And we've got to see who blinks first really, because everybody's driving very well. Again, we've got a bit of lag off of Danny's car, but we've got to see who blinks first in terms of pit stop strategy. We're not even halfway through. Oh, Stig going very sideways there, and there's VX Dave in the background, so VX Dave's not dropped off entirely, but is some way off, and Cordless has dropped a fair way off, so Cordless has obviously had a problem on that last lap because he's some 3.5 seconds slower than VX Dave. Next position up on him, and a little bit of curb hopping through there with Simon again, and Apex coming up over the start finish line now, and then we've got Mark and Lee and Dale and Sammy. The gap now opened up a little bit, so I think there must have been a mistake from DTI Dave on this lap, because last lap around DTI Dave was the quicker of the 2 cars, but not on this lap. DTI Dave has fallen back a bit, so he's made a small error I think, and that's all it takes. And of course if he drops out of the slipstream of Danny, Danny's going to be able to pull away with the black and yellow Momo car there. In 3rd place still is the race winner from race 1, and he's having a fantastic day today. He must be feeling on top of the world compared to a lot of the season so far. Stig really, really improving massively, and a little bit of trivia actually, race 1 was his first podium of the season, and he could be on for another podium. VX Dave in the background going a little bit wide over the curb, not far enough to get track limits, but still pushing on hard, and these guys out the front. So Danny at the moment leading the race, and he has already won twice this season, once at Monza and once at Hockenheim last time out, so he could be on for his 3rd race win of the season. Stig in the background again going sideways. It's amazing how he keeps that car going without losing the back end. VX Dave perhaps closing a little bit on Stig now, but still a long way off and still a long way out of slipstream range, so there's a long way to go in this one. Simon's into the pits now. This will give Apex an opportunity. He's obviously had to make that early pit stop due to the low fuel, and he's up to 6th place now, so this is looking a little bit rosier at the moment. Mark in 8th, Lee in 9th, Dell in 10th, and Sammy in 11th still. And looking back towards the front, you can see Stig coming down the hill. Still these guys battling it out, Danny and Dave, so that's Brave and DTI. Stig definitely quite a bit further in the background, but VX Dave definitely starting to close him down actually. You can see there's now only a couple of seconds between these guys, but still not quite as close as our race leaders, who are the closest guys on track. So this race victory is still up for grabs. I think it's still not over. as Danny launches it into the penultimate corner, through the final corner, riding the curves beautifully there, and the BMW also doing likewise, but just doesn't have that power up the, well, it doesn't seem to have the aero. I think up the straight seems to be more the thing, despite the better shape of the saloon car. There's Cordless in a ever more lonely race, going a little bit deep there, a little bit of lag as well, but into the penultimate corner. Lovely run out of the final corner though, again with a bit of lag. Now Cordless is into the pits. This is a critical phase of the race, so out of 5th place he comes, and as we look a little bit further back, the next man to potentially get past him is Apex in the second of the Imola cars, and one of the title contenders, so he will be hoping he can get past. Where is Cordless at the moment? Cordless still in the pits, so Apex now coming along the start-finish straight. This could be quite tight between them. Where is Cordless? Cordless is coming out of the pits. Apex is flying though, and I think Apex might well get this by quite some margin. Yes, he does, because Cordless is still exiting the pits. There's a long pit lane here, and it does take a long while to exit. Out in front, there's now a much bigger gap between Danny and DTI Dave, but these guys are closing up. There's a couple of seconds between these guys. In fact, there's a similar gap as it is between the race leaders. Apologies, but still relatively close races. Now Mark and Cordless extremely close on track. The two teammates, they collided on the first corner, first lap at Hockenheim. In the background, Lee goes really wide into the sand trap. I think he's just kept out the barrier, so that's great to see, but sad to see him go off there, and that is going to put a big dent into his race, as I think Delta Sport might get past him. But yeah, the teammates battling it out here, and this is great stuff. They've been close on track several times this year, and it's unfortunate to see what happened at Hockenheim. A bit of a mistake. Lee in the background still just about staying ahead of Delta Sport. We'll come back to these guys in a minute as we look at the race leaders. And there's Stig in 3rd, VX Dave in 4th, Apex in 5th. But Mark and Cordless extremely close on track, so I think we'll go on board with Mark, as he hopes to bring home another good result. We'll go on board with Cordless, who's just behind. Cordless turning in over the chicane. Mark going a little bit deep, that might give an opportunity for Cordless. Oh, Mark almost turns in on him, but to be honest, Mark was just trying to get back on the track there, and Cordless very astutely dived to the left to make sure that they didn't make contact. And these two do race quite hard together. Cordless has got him really hard there. That might be a little bit too hard. I think he's just about kept it on the track. It's difficult to see from that camera angle, and I think Mark might get a track limits for that. It was a big bounce over the curb there, but this is really awesome racing, and they're back alongside one another as they head up over the start-finish straight. So I don't know whether Cordless gave that position back. I think he might well have done. Whether he got a track limits warning, I'm not sure. As they come up to turn 1, and the left-right chicane, Mark goes in a little bit deep, Ian gets it a little bit better. He's going to look for the exit, and where's he going to go? He looks right, he looks left, and then he's lost his momentum. And that happens so much around this circuit, because it's not an easy circuit to overtake. Out front, I can tell you that the race leaders are getting ever further apart, and Danny really looking to stroke this home at the moment, with a good gap out in the lead, and then a fairly equidistant gap back to Stig, who's also keeping VX Dave at bay by a fair margin at the moment. And watch these two 4C Motorsport cars, they're so close on track. This is excellent to see, and they're keeping it clean and tidy, and that's great. But it's really good fun to watch, and one of them running wide. Who was that? That was Mark, I think. So Cordless now comes past with the yellow wing mirrors. So Cordless with the yellow wing mirrors, and Mark with the white wing mirrors, I think they are. And that was very good racing, but really good to see these guys racing on track. The two BMWs now getting reasonably close on track, because Stig is closing down on DTI Dave. VX Dave not really able to make inroads into these BMWs at the moment. They're being very pesky in terms of the championship, because Danny has outscored Dave in the first race here today, and of course Dave had that nightmare at Hockenheim as well, Danny's teammate. So Danny's streaking away, and he's doing it again in this race, and that's bad news for VX Dave, though he's got that big buffer in the championship at the moment. He won't want to be losing that. And but there's a long way to go in this, but these two BMWs are extremely fast at the moment. That's going to make life very difficult, because it's unlikely he's going to be able to jump past them without getting his foot down a lot more. And Apex, of course, having that really unfortunate first race with Cordus tapping into the back of him, knocking him more or less down to the back of the field. And this race hasn't gone particularly well either so far, but there's still a long way to go. Apex running in 5th position at the moment. Cordless has pulled away from Mark, so they are 6th and 7th. Lee is in 8th, a little bit further behind, with Dell in 10th, Dell in 9th, Sammy in 10th, and Simon is out. We didn't see how that happened, so not quite sure what happened to Simon there, but we'll try and keep an eye on that. Stig is in the pits. Stig is in the pits, and VX Dave has gone past, as you'd naturally expect. But Stig heading into pit lane. So Stig is the first of the top 4. The top 4 that were starting to streak away somewhat, and we'll see what happens. So Stig in that pit lane. It looks like a relatively long pit stop. There must have been at least 10 seconds of that pit stop. But Danny is out in the lead with a comfortable margin over DTI Dave, ahead of VX Dave, who's even further behind, and it is looking pretty cosy for Danny. Stig now exiting the pit, so reasonably slow pit, but he had a good gap back to VX Dave, so we'll see what happens there. Apex in the pit for the second time. We gather there's fueling issues again, so he's had problems with the fuel load, and he's had to pit for a second time. That's going to be disastrous for his championship. He's now down to 7th, 8th place. He may well drop to 9th. We're going to see Del Sport coming up alongside now, so Apex unfortunately drops to 9th place at this stage in the race. As we look back towards the front, Danny looking absolutely imperious, 6 seconds ahead of DTI Dave. VX Dave is actually catching on DTI Dave a little bit, but it really is a little bit at this stage, and we've got not a lot of the race left to go, so I'm not convinced that there's going to be much opportunity for position swaps. Danny still doesn't come in. DTI Dave, will he pit? He's looking to the right, he's in. So DTI Dave in the second of the BMWs, also in the pit lane, so it's going to be really interesting to see how much longer these Renaults go. If the Renaults go a good number of laps, then they may well make up more places in this, but Danny a long way ahead of VX Dave, some 10 seconds up. DTI Dave in 3rd place. Will he come out ahead of his teammate Stig? I think it's quite likely. Stig now heading down towards the final couple of corners. In fact, Stig is quite a long way back, so I think DTI Dave will come out well ahead. He was a couple of seconds ahead anyway on track, a few seconds ahead. Cordless and Mark again looking pretty inseparable. So Cordless has obviously had a bad innings, because Mark is now back on the case. Either that or Mark has really picked up the pace. But actually, yeah, Mark was half a second quicker than Cordless last lap around. Danny still well out in the lead with VX Dave in 2nd place. Obviously the pit stops yet to work out. VX Dave has actually pulled in a little bit of time now on Danny, so that race lead coming down a bit, and the line's looking really good there, but that is a huge gap, and that is very unlikely to disappear. I think by the end of the race, DTI Dave in 3rd place, only 40 seconds behind the race leader, so he may still fancy his chances for a potential victory, but I think it's unlikely. 40 seconds is a long time, even though it is a long pit stop round here, and Stig is some 8 seconds behind his teammate. That might give VX Dave an opportunity to drop out in between those two when he comes out of his pit stop. And speaking of pits, Danny is in, so race leader is in, and what's VX Dave doing? He's pitting at the same time, so that's interesting. No split strategy going on there. These two both in the pits, and now it's a question of watching what the rest of the grid does. DTI Dave coming out of the chicane ahead of the final two left-hander bends. Danny is coming out of the pits as VX Dave goes into them, so there is almost zero chance of VX Dave winning this race, but he has just set his fastest lap of the race so far on the previous lap, and that was 2/10 quicker than Danny's. DTI Dave coming up now, the start-finish line. Well, VX Dave's a long way out of exiting pits. Danny's out though, so Danny is clear for the lead, and VX Dave versus DTI Dave is reasonably close, but not close enough for VX Dave, because DTI Dave has got through, and you can see VX Dave right in the distance there. Of course, there probably wasn't much chance of that anyway. They were many seconds apart before they came in, and they come out some 4 or 5 seconds apart. Yeah, that's quite slow. I think Danny got a particularly good pit stop there, because he's come out with an even bigger gap. And but Stig is the big loser actually, isn't he? Because he's dropped from 3rd to 4th and a long way back from VX Dave now. So that potential podium is ebbing away with only 2.5 laps left to run. Cordless is in 5th, still ahead of his teammate, but they're still close on track. Lee is still not far behind in the red and yellow Momo car. Dell in 8th. Apex after that nightmare double pit, but the car's still looking immaculate, so he's kept that in really nice condition. So let's see if he can bring that home for a good result. Sammy in 10th, and we've already seen Simon DNF'd. Looking further into the background there is Danny in the lead with DTI Dave in the background. Sorry, should have said. VX Dave some way off of that moment, and it looks like a bit of a foregone conclusion between this top lot now. The gaps are big, and as long as the mistakes stay to the minimum, these guys are going to finish as they are. And there is Danny having a lovely run coming out of there. DTI Dave has a big gap over VX Dave, but oh, look at the cars, they're all really pushing really hard. You saw DTI Dave going hard in the BMW. Now let's watch his teammate. Here is Stig. Oh, they're all pushing really hard on these last few laps to see what they can achieve. These guys are all really close on track, so we've got Cordless ahead of Mark. Lee has fallen behind a little way. In fact, Mark's fallen a little way behind his teammate Cordless. So Cordless in 5th at the moment. Danny with that big gap. There's DTI Dave, and yeah, so DTI Dave lapping very well at the moment. VX Dave a little bit further behind. Stig in 4th, Cordless. So these guys are really having quite a tussle, aren't they? Ever so good to watch. The racing, obviously, between teammates needs to remain as clean as possible, and these guys are keeping it really clean, but my goodness are they keeping it firm as well. Look at the pressure Mark now putting Ian under as they head towards the left-right chicane. Whose line is it? I think Cordless is going to keep it as they head into the corner. Yes, he does. Bounces over the curb. Bounces over the second curb. Mark does it slightly faster, I think, coming out of the right-hander section as they head up to the hairpin. Cordless looking just marginally defensive, I think. And Mark just perhaps looking slightly more comfortable out of the two of them for now. And of course, Lee behind will be hoping that it all kicks off, because if the two teammates take each other off, that's going to give Lee a serious amount of extra points. So great to watch anyway. The racing really good between these guys. There's a big gap though out in front between the top 3, between the top 4 even. So we're going to stay on board. In fact, let's go on board with Mark as we head up the hill. In fact, we'll go on board with Lee. Lee's a bit further back, so it's probably not worth watching. But here we are, we've got Mark on board heading into the chicane. Very smooth on the brakes, blocking the curve a little bit. Perhaps loses out slightly because Cordless didn't touch the curves very much. And look at the exit comparison. But I suspect Mark will be able to gain a little bit back in the slipstream, particularly after they get out of these next 2 corners. Both of them pushing really hard. Mark getting a beautiful line into there. And as they come out of the final corner and up the start-finish straight, oh, both of them running a little bit wide. It's difficult to see, but I think one or both of them may end up with the track limits there. That looked very testy indeed. And as they come on to the last lap of the race, Cordless still holding Mark at bay at the moment. excellent to watch. Really, really good driving. Now, VX Dave, well, I was going to say it looked like he was closing on DTI Dave a bit. I thought he was a little bit, but there's not much in it. There's still a bit of a gap rather, and Danny has got a good lead, 5.5 second advantage. He's actually been a bit slower than the two behind him, especially last lap was very slow, and VX Dave's was almost 2 seconds faster. So Danny must have had a track limits or something on that penultimate lap. These guys still really close, but it's be interesting to see what happens between these two guys. VX Dave looks like he's pushing really hard with a couple of corners left. Oh my goodness, bouncing over the curve, just keeping it within the track limits. DTI Dave there. I think Danny, as he comes out the penultimate corner, he knows, and the last corner, he knows he's going to be able to walk this home. Danny wins his 3rd race of the season, an excellent drive, really, really quite fast. A little bit further back, and VX Dave is pushing like mad, but he's not close enough. But is he trying to get the slipstream of that car in front? I think he is. Is that going to benefit him as they come up towards the start-finish line? There's possibly a little bit of pick-up there, and yes, he sets the fastest lap on the last lap. Stig, a brilliant 4th place though, after that victory earlier today. This is going to feel like a brilliant result, an excellent result, a win and a 4th. But look how close these guys are once more. We've got Cordless ahead of Mark. They've been inseparable for half of the race or more, and an excellent result from Cordless, who can't feel one of his legs, but pulls off a mighty finish in 5th. Mark an excellent 6th. I think he'd be pretty happy with that, and I don't think Lee's going to be too disappointed after being off in the gravel earlier on. Apex comes across in 8th. I think he will get dropped to 9th due to track limits infringement, but a really good recovery from Apex considering he's had to undertake 2 pit stops during this race. Dell does move up 1 position, and then we've got Sammy rounding out the points finishes, and of course Simon DNFing, and that is your race over.